So now we shall revisit irrational numbers. So in the very beginning, I told you that irrational numbers are those which cannot be expressed in the form of a fraction like p by q. So examples were root 2, root 3, root 15, and then you have decimals, etc. Now there's a very interesting fact regarding irrational numbers. They were actually discovered by a philosopher named Hippasus. But in those days, when he claimed about that, that irrational numbers exist, everyone was very shocked by his discovery and they took it to their heart. They were like, no, there is no such number which cannot be expressed in the form of a fraction. So there is no such thing like irrational numbers, you're speaking rubbish. And that was considered as a crime for which Hippasus was literally drowned at the sea. So that is a little bit of background behind irrational numbers. They were that big of a controversy in those days. So now we have this very important theorem. It will help you prove many things in math. And I'll just tell you their proof, okay? But first, let's see what is its statement. So let p be a prime number. If p divides a square, then p divides a. So a is some positive integer and p is a prime number. It is as simple as that, if you just consider the statement alone, like if I say that 3 divides 12 square, then they are trying to say that 3 divides its square root as well, which is 12. Okay, now how is that possible? Now we know that we can write 12 as 2 to the power 2 into 3, by prime factorization method. So 3 divides, so 12 I told you is equal to 2 to the power 2 into 3. So if I do it square, so it will become 2 to the power 4 into 3 to the power 2. So 3 would divide 2 to the power 2 into 3 as well. Okay, that is what they're trying to say. Now to understand this, let's consider a as a positive integer, and using prime factorization, what is the prime factorization method, where you can write any number as a product of its prime factors. So using prime factorization method, a can be written as p1, p2 going on to pn, where all these pi's, okay, these are called pi's, okay, in general, like p1, p2 going on to pn. What are these? They are your prime numbers, and in brackets you can write that they are not necessarily distinct. Distinct means different, which means it's not important for them to be different. Okay, it might happen that some prime factors turn out to be the same, and then what do? We make use of exponents and then we combine them. Okay, so you've just written a as this. Now what you are going to do is you will do squaring both sides. Okay, so you will do squaring both sides. So that will give you a into a, which is a square, and then you have p1, p2 going on like this, and you multiply them one more time. So if you do this multiplication, you will get p1 square, p2 square, and this goes on till pn square. Alright, now using the fundamental theorem of arithmetic, okay, you can write the thing then of arithmetic. If p is dividing a square, then p has to be one of these numbers only. So p has to be one of p1, p2 going on to pn only. Okay, so basically I've written a square as p1 square, p2 square going on till pn square. Okay, and now we are saying that if p is dividing a square, then definitely p would be one of these only, because p is not mentioned, separately. So if I take p to be equal to p1, because p is one of these only, okay, it's one of these pi's only. So if p is equal to p1, and then I say p divides a square, okay, it's already given to us, p divides a square, then I can write this expression for a square, that p will be dividing p1 square, p2 square going on till pn square. But I have just assumed P to be equal to P1. So this means P divides P square, P2 square going on to Pn square. Now if I take square root of this term, okay, if I take square root of this term, I get P divides P, P2 going on to Pn. Now we know what our P was. I took it to be P1 only. So that means P divides P1, P2 going on till Pn. And what is this expression? This is nothing but your A, right? So this means P divides A, hence proved. Okay. So what we did is we used prime factorization. We wrote A as a product of its prime factors. So P1, P2, all these, going on till Pn are prime numbers, and they are not necessarily distinct, which means they could be the same as well. You do squaring both sides, you get A square as P1 square, P2 square going on till Pn square. Now it has already been given to us that P divides A square. So if you make use of fundamental theorem of arithmetic, it means P has to be one of these Pi's only. So let's say P is equal to P1. So then again we write P divides A square, and A square is this expression, P1 square, P2 square going on till Pn square. Now instead of P1 square, I can write P square because I assumed P to be equal to P1, and this assumption was based on this theorem. Now if I take square root of this term, I will get P, P2 going on till Pn. Now P can again be replaced by P1, and this expression P1, P2 going on till Pn is nothing but A, so P divides A. Okay, so just remember this theorem, P divides A square, P divides A. Because now we'll use it to prove if a particular number is irrational or not. Now all these proofs for numbers which are irrational, all these proving questions would be done by a method called proof by contradiction. Okay, so there are different methods in mathematics by which you can prove anything. Okay, but here to prove if a particular number is irrational, we make use of this particular method, proof by contradiction. Now as the name suggests, what we do here is we make a wrong assumption and then we carry it forward, and in the end we said that, oh, the results are wrong because the assumption was wrong, so we prove it by contradiction. So here we will assume the converse. Okay, so suppose root 2 is rational. Okay, we'll start off only with the wrong assumption. Okay, suppose root 2 is rational. Now if you know it is a rational number, we can express it in the form of a fraction. Okay, so therefore I can write root 2 as, say, r upon s, where r and s are some integers and s is not equal to 0. Okay, now let's say that r and s have some common factor. Okay, they have a common factor other than 1. Okay, other than 1 there is some common factor. So dividing by that factor, gives us root 2 is equal to a upon b. So basically r and s have some common factors. So you cancel r and s and you ultimately get a upon b over here. Again, a and b are integers where b is not equal to 0, and we are assuming that a and b cannot be reduced any further. A upon b cannot be reduced into a simpler fraction now. So let's say that now let a and b be co-prime. I'll just tell you what co-prime number means. So to consider co-prime, you need to have at least two numbers with you, and if they are co-prime, it means they do not have any common factor other than 1. Alright, so co-prime numbers are those which do not have any common factor other than 1. So example 2 and 3 are co-prime. They do not have any common factors, okay, except for 1. So till now what we've done is we've assumed root 2 is rational, so it can be written as r by s. Now r and s have some common factors, so dividing by that common factor simply gave me root 2 as a upon b. Now you make use of cross multiplication, and here you will get root 2b is equal to a. Okay, then you do squaring both sides, you will get 2b square is equal to a square. Make this as equation number 1. It has been obtained by squaring both sides. Now I can pull this 2 down, right? Numerator becomes denominator when it goes from LHS to RHS. So b square is equal to a square by 2. Now this means a square by 2 means that 2 divides a square. If 2 divides a square, can't I say 2 divides a? because we are using theorem 1.3. Okay, 2 is a prime factor dividing a positive integer's square a square, and now it means 2 will divide a as well. If 2 is dividing a, it means a by 2 can be written, and let's say it's equal to some constant c, same. Okay, now again I can cross multiply, it will give me a is equal to 2c. Now I can substitute this value of a in equation number 1 over here, and that would give me 2b square is equal to 2c whole square. So 2b square is equal to 4c square. You can cancel this 2. So we've gotten b square is equal to 2c square. Again I can pull this 2 down just like I did in case of this expression. So b square by 2 is equal to c square. Alright, I'll just clear up the space. So if I can write b square by 2, it means that 2 divides b square. Again make use of theorem 1.3, and then what can we write? I give you some time, okay? Right over here. What would 2 divide then? 2 divides b. Okay, so we just saw that 2 divides a and b both, but we said a and b are co-prime. You remember that assumption that they do not have any common factor other than 1, but there is a common factor 2. So this is contradictory. Now what is the reason for this contradiction? Okay, the reason for this contradiction was the wrong assumption. Okay, this is contradictory because assumption was wrong. Okay, so root 2 rational is wrong, therefore root 2 is irrational, and we have proved that by contradiction, hence proved. Is it clear? So it will become clearer. Okay, we'll discuss a few more examples here. So like again we have to prove here root 3 is irrational. Again we'll be proving it by contradiction. So write proof by contradiction, and then you say suppose root 3 is rational. Okay, if it is rational, what is the problem? I can write it in the form of r by s, where r and s are integers, s is not equal to 0. Please write those statements again, that let r and s have a common factor other than 1, and then you divide by that common factor, and ultimately, so just write those statements here. So on division, like r by s, I get a by b ultimately here, where a and b are some integers, b is not equal to 0, and a and b are co-prime. So we are assuming that they do not have any common factor other than 1, so we are not simplifying this fraction any further. Now you must have noticed that everywhere I'm just saying here s is not equal to 0. Like, why am I making the denominator not equal to 0? The thing is, if this denominator was equal to 0, okay, so like if I take anything like 2 upon 0, do you know what it is? Is it 2? Is it 0? What is it? It is neither. Anything divided by 0 is infinity. This is just some additional information, but a bit helpful, okay? So if anything is divisible by 0, it means that the end result is going to be infinity. Now, what is this infinity? This is not defined. So to avoid such a case, because this is undesirable, we take the denominator not to be equal to 0. That was just some extra information, okay? Right, so we can again do what? The steps are exactly the same, okay? If you want to prove any number irrational like this, the steps would remain the same. So you do cross multiplication over here, you will get root 3b is equal to a, you do squaring both sides, you will get 3b square equal to a square. I can bring this 3 here, b square is equal to a square by 3, mark this as equation number 1. So this means a square by 3 is possible, which means 3 divides a square. So if you make use of your theorem 1.3, you can say 3 divides a. So can you see that theorem was so useful? You can use it to prove any number as irrational now. So if 3 divides a, it means a by 3 is possible, and let's say it's equal to c. Okay, now a can be written as 3c. Now you substitute a in equation number 1. Okay, so you get b square is equal to okay, sorry, this was equation number 1. So b square is equal to 3b square is equal to a square. So 3b square is equal to 3c whole square. So 3b square is equal to 9c square. This 3 gets cancelled and you will get b square is equal to 3c square. Again, you can bring this 3 over here. So b square by 3 is equal to c square, which means b square by 3 is possible. It means 3 divides b square. Using theorem 1.3, 3 divides b. Okay, so we see 3 divides a and 3 divides b. But we said a and b are co-prime, so this is a contradiction. Alright, because a and b were not supposed to have any other common factor except for 1, but here they are having a factor of 3 also as common. So a and b are co-prime. This is contradictory. This is because the assumption that root 3 is rational was wrong, and we are proving it by contradiction now that root 3 is actually irrational, hence proved. Okay, so the procedure remains the same. Now we have a slightly different form of the question. Okay, so in this case also we are going to proving by contradiction. So write down proof by contradiction, and suppose 5 minus root 3 is rational. If it is rational, again I can write it in the form of r by s, where s is not equal to 0, r and s are some integers. Let r and s have a common factor other than 1. Dividing by that common factor implies that 5 minus root 3 is equal to a by b. Okay, now a and b are co-prime and b is not equal to 0. They are just some integers. Now what you need to do is, if you were given some normal question, okay, like root 2 or root 3 is irrational, you would have simply cross multiplied at this stage. But here that won't help. In such a case, okay, listen to my words very carefully. In such a case, you have to make the square root term as your left hand side. Okay, you should have nothing else on your LHS, just this. So we'll just make a simple rearrangement. So let me have minus root 3 here, and this 5 will go over there. So if no sign is mentioned, by default it means it is a plus. So plus, when shifted from left hand side to right hand side, becomes minus. So I'll get minus root 3 is equal to a upon b minus 5. You take the LCM, you get minus root 3 is equal to a minus 5b upon b. And now I want to get rid of this minus sign as well. So you multiply both sides of this equation by minus 1. So then you will get root 3 as 5b minus a upon b. Now a, b and 5, what are they? They are all integers. If they are integers, then RHS is rational because I'm having like a fraction of 2 integers. Now because of this equal to sign, it means that LHS is also rational. Okay, now what is on the LHS? I'm having root 3. So root 3 is also rational. But we just saw, like in 1 or 2 examples before, like we just discussed that root 3 is actually irrational. So this is contradictory. Reason for contradiction, wrong assumption. That means 5 minus root 3 is not rational but irrational, hence proved. So here the methodology is a bit different. You make root 3 only, like the square root term, as the subject of the formula instead of doing a cross multiplication over here. And then you see that you are having integers. So this becomes a rational number. If you are having equal to sign, it means this should also be a rational number. But is it? No, it isn't. We've just proven actually that root 3 is irrational. So this is the proof, again by contradiction. Now this is another different form, okay. Root 3, root 2 you have to prove as irrational. So write down proof by contradiction. And suppose 3 root 2 is rational. If it is rational, I can write 3 root 2 as r by s. R and s are integers, s is not equal to 0. Let r and s have a common factor other than 1, dividing by that common factor. Write those 2 lines. Implies that 3 by root 2 is equal to a and b. These are some integers. They are co-prime. They do not have any common factor other than 1, and b is not equal to 0. Now again, I won't do a simple cross multiplication. I will just make root 2 as the subject of my formula. So root 2 is equal to a upon 3b. So basically the trick here is that if you're just given root 2 or root 3, then you choose that cross multiplication method. But otherwise the technique would vary. You just have the square root term as your LHS. Okay. So I've written root 2 is equal to a upon 3b. Now since A, 3 and B, what are they all? They are all integers. Therefore my RHS becomes rational because fraction is written, of two integers. So if RHS is rational and I'm having equal to, so a rational number can only be equal to a rational number. So this means root 2, which is your LHS, is rational. But we saw in theorem 1.4 that root 2 is not rational. So this is contradictory. Reason for this contradiction is the wrong assumption that 3 root 2 is rational. So again, 3 root 2 is irrational, and we've proved that by contradiction. Now we will be revisiting rational numbers. So I'm sure by now we already know what rational numbers are. We've used them throughout. So a rational number is one which can be expressed in the form of a fraction, say p by q. Here the important thing is that p and q are integers, but q is not equal to 0, for the simple reason that if I do p upon 0, anything divided by 0 is equal to infinity, and infinity is not defined. So we do not want such a case. Therefore we say q has to be non-zero. Now here the only thing that we have not discussed so far is the decimal expansion of rational numbers. Okay, so if I give you a rational number, so first of all let me tell you some examples also, like 2 by 3, 3 by 5. I'm sure you know plenty by now, so just write some by yourself. So any rational number on decimal expansion gives me two possible results. Okay, it can give me a terminating decimal. I'll just explain you what each term means. Or it can give me a recurring decimal. Recurring decimal is also called non-terminating or repeating, right? Now what do we mean by a terminating decimal? So if I give you a rational number, say 1 by 2, it is rational, 1 and 2 are integers. I've expressed it in the form of a fraction. So, if you don't know how to calculate it by long division, then, you can make use of a calculator. So, you will get 1 by 2 as 0.5. So, you see that, this division and conversion into decimal stops at this decimal point stage, okay? We're not having any more digits after the decimal place after 5. Okay, so it just stops here. Stops here means it terminates here. So, this is your example of terminating decimal, 1 by 2, which gives you 0.5. Recurring decimal is like 1 by 3. Have you ever tried performing a long division or using a calculator for this calculation? Well, if you have, you will be knowing that 1 by 3 is 0.33333, and it's not like there are finite number of 3s. This 3, it's like trailing 3s. These 3s keep on going on and on and on. So that means it is non-terminating. It's not stopping. It is repeating. Or in other words, it is recurring. Now we'll figure out, how just by looking at a rational number's denominator. Okay, how by looking at just the denominator of a rational number, you can make out if it's going to give you a terminating or a non-terminating decimal on decimal expansion. So I hope you know what decimal expansion means. You are just converting a rational number, which is in the form of a fraction, into a decimal. So this is a theorem. So this theorem can be explained by examples. So let's say x is a rational number, so we can write it in the form of p by q, where p and q are some integers and they are co-prime. So they do not have any common factors other than 1. So I told you that we'll just look at the denominator and make out if it is going to give me a terminating or a non-terminating decimal. So you perform a prime factorization of q. Prime factorization means you write the number as a product of its prime numbers. So if this q is of the form 2 to the power n into 5 to the power m, where n and m are some positive integers, then I am going to get a terminating decimal expansion. Alright, so basically what they are saying is that you've been given any rational number, okay? So in its denominator, if you see any factor of 2, or if you see a factor of 5, or if you see both, okay? And there can be some powers also to them. Okay, no issues. In all these cases, you're going to get terminating decimals. But if I tell you that I'm giving you p upon 2 into 3, so if I'm going to have any other factor, apart from 2 and 5, this will not give me a terminating decimal. If I give you p upon 3 into 3, again not terminating, no factor 2 and 5. If I give you p upon 5 into 3, again it won't be terminating. Okay, now I will explain you with some examples that why is it so important to have 2 and 5 in the denominator. So like a general rule that if I'm given like say 7 by 10, okay, if my denominator is 10, okay, or a multiple of 10, it's very easy and convenient to write it in the form of a decimal. So like in this case, it becomes 0.7. If I give you 1 by 10, it becomes 0.1. So for the simple reason that if the denominator is a multiple of 10, what do I get? I get a terminating decimal. So due to this reason, I'm saying that the denominator should be of this form. Because if my denominator has say 2, I can always multiply it by 5 and I can get 10. So I can get a terminating decimal. Similarly, if my denominator only has 5, I can multiply it by 2 and I'll get 10. Okay, so it becomes very convenient to convert a denominator to a multiple of 10 if factors of 2 or 5 are present. Okay, I'll just demonstrate this via some examples. So if I give you 3 by 8, okay, so I have to do what? I have to do a prime factorization of my denominator. So I can write 8 as 2 cube. Now I can easily convert it into a multiple of 10 by multiplying numerator and denominator by 5 to the power 3. Now what is 5 to the power 3? It is 125. So if you multiply, you will get 375 upon 1000. See, I was just having 2, a prime factor of 2 in my denominator, and how by multiplication with 5 to the power 3 in this case, I got a multiple of 10. So now I can easily write this as 0.375 and this is a terminating decimal. Now if I give you, instead of 3 by 8, say I give you 7 upon 80. 7 upon 80. Now I can write this 80 as 2 to the power 4 into 5. Now here I can still multiply it by some factors so that the denominator becomes a multiple of 10. So again, let me multiply numerator and denominator by 125, which is nothing but 5 to the power 3. So on solving this, you will get 875 upon 10 to the power 4. So you've gotten this, and now you can write it like 0.0875, which again is terminating. So if you've understood theorem 1.5, theorem 1.6 is very simple. It again says that if I've been given some rational number, okay, x, I can write it as p by q, where p and q are co-prime. Then if q is written in the form of its prime factors by prime factorization method, and if it is not of this form, then I'll get a non-terminating, repeating or recurring decimal expansion. Okay, so very simple again. If I give you here say 10 upon 7, okay, now here we know that 7 is there in the denominator. I'm having neither 2 nor 5 but 7. So it's clearly not of the form 2 to the power n into 5 to the power m. So in this case, it means that this is not going to give me a terminating decimal. But we can even prove this by long division. Okay, so here you can do a long division. So you take 7 here and 10 here. So 7 ones are 7 minus 30. So if I want to get the 0 actually here, I'm going to put 0 point. Then 7 fours are 28. I get 20 here. 7 twos are 14. I get 6 in 0. 7 eights are 56. Okay, I'm just going to take a curve now, but you do it properly. I'm not having that much space. So 7 fives are 35 minus here you get 50. 7 sevens are 49. You get 1 and then you take this. So 7 ones are 7 and again you get 30. So do you see that we started off with 30 as remainder and we've again obtained 30 as remainder. So this process will again go on. So this is going to give me a recurring or non-terminating or repeating decimal. So this is one example. Just look at the denominator. It will tell you volumes about that particular rational number's decimal expansion. Okay. So I hope this is clear to you. So if I'll just give you some more examples. Say if I give you 2 upon 5. What is this? This is terminating because denominator has a factor of 5 only. If I give you say 2 upon 15. So I can do a prime factorization of 15. it will give me 5 into 3. I'm having a prime factor other than 2 and 5, which is 3, which will make it non-terminating. And one thing that you have to be careful of, when you're doing the exercise questions as well, is that if you've been given any rational number, first make sure that the two integers p and q are co-prime. Try to simplify the fraction as much as you can, otherwise you might get wrong results. So for example, if I take 6 by 15 and I do not simplify it, then what will happen? I'll take prime factorization of 15 and I'll get 5 into 3. I'll say 3 is there. So this is non-terminating. But in reality, 6 by 15 is terminating. This is because you did not simplify this. So you can do 3 2s are 6 and 3 5s are 15. Now you get 2 by 5, which is terminating. So please remember, always simplify the rational number which you have been given and only then do a prime factorization of its denominator to check for the decimal expansion. So with this, we come to an end of this chapter and we'll quickly have a revision. So we revised over here what are real numbers. So real numbers are a combination of rational and irrational numbers. Rational numbers are those which are going to have natural numbers, whole numbers, integers, and then rational numbers are those which can be expressed in the form of p by q, where q is not equal to 0. Again, I tell you why q is not equal to 0, because anything divided by 0 is equal to infinity and is not defined. Irrational numbers, on the other hand, are those which cannot be written in the form of fractions like root 2, root 3, etc. After this, we discussed Euclid's division lemma. So lemma was a mathematical statement proven already and now being used to prove something else. So here it's simply, okay, so here if I'm giving you two positive integers a and b, then there'll be two unique integers q and r, such that a is equal to bq plus r, where r is greater than equal to 0 and it is less than b. Remember, q can also be equal to 0 over here, and this is nothing but dividend is equal to divisor into quotient plus remainder. Then we have Euclid's division algorithm, a sequence of steps which are well defined to find out the HCF of any two positive integers a and b. HCF is the highest common factor which will divide both a and b, and that has to be a common factor obviously, but the highest one you have to choose. So here the algorithm said that you have to apply Euclid's division lemma to them and you have to keep on doing that till you get remainder equal to 0. Okay, if at any stage you get remainder not equal to 0, then you apply the lemma to this b and r, and ultimately when you get remainder equal to 0, whatever divisor you were having, okay, here instead of b, whatever you were having, that will be the HCF of these two numbers a and b. Okay, make sure that when you're doing this division, you choose a greater than b first, or whatever you're choosing, and then only proceed with the division. Okay, it should not be b greater than, basically if it's a is greater than b, then it should be like this and not this. Okay, do not interchange that. Then after this we discussed different examples, and then we talked of prime factorization, how using that we can write any any number as a product of its prime factors. Then we had fundamental theorem of arithmetic for that, which was given by Carl Gauss, and it states that any composite number, which means any number which has factors other than 1 itself, okay, it can be written as a product of prime factors, but that order should be unique. So a is equal to p1, p2 going on till pn, where they are all prime numbers, but p1 is less than p2 and is less than pn. In fact, they can be less than equal to also, so they are not necessarily distinct. Then after this, we discussed that HCF into LCM is equal to the product of the two numbers whose HCF and LCM you are finding. So using this, if I know the two integers and if I know HCF, I can also find your LCM. LCM is the lowest common multiple. Okay, you know how to do it. You just look at the factors of a and b in this case, and then you rule out those factors which are going to have a lesser power. Okay, so if I've been given a having a factor 2 and b having a factor 2 to the power 2, I'll just take b's 2 to the power 2. Then we discussed what are irrational numbers and rational numbers and a few theorems regarding them. So for irrational numbers, we said that if p divides a square, then p divides a. We use this to prove root 2, root 3 and many more numbers as irrational, proving by contradiction. Okay. Then we said that a rational number on decimal expansion can give you two possibilities, terminating decimals, or it can give you recurring decimals. Terminating is like 1 by 2 giving you 0.5, okay, and recurring is that which keeps on going, okay, like 10 by 7 we saw. So how do you make out if a rational number is terminating or not? You take that rational number, say a by b, you try to simplify it first and only then you look for its denominator, do a prime factorization, and if it's of the form 2 to the power n, 5 to the power m, then it is what, terminating. If you have any other factor apart from 2 and 5, it is recurring. So that's it. Thanks a lot.